1969. The federal government issues a mandate that seems beyond reproach. They want to end whiplash. The goal was noble. Insurance companies had spent years lobbying for head restraints to stop the epidemic of neck injuries in rear-end collisions. At the time, whiplash was costing hundreds of millions in medical claims and leaving thousands of drivers with lifelong pain. Engineers did what they always do. They complied. By 1970, every new car rolling off an American assembly line was equipped with headrests, and the data suggested a victory. Within 24 months, whiplash injuries dropped by nearly 20%. The mandate worked exactly as the bureaucrats intended. But there was a ghost in the machine. Nobody was tracking what happened when those same cars were put in reverse. By the time the industry noticed the pattern, a completely different type of accident had increased so violently that the headrest mandate may have killed more people than it saved. This is the story of how a safety feature designed to protect your neck accidentally created an epidemic of backup accidents. It's a story of how blind spot engineering reshaped the American car and eventually forced the invention of the technology that is now in every driveway in the country. The problem wasn't the headrest itself, it was the geometry of obstruction. Before 1969, car interiors were open. Most seats were low-back designs that barely reached the driver's shoulders. Rear visibility was nearly perfect. You could look over your right shoulder and see exactly where your bumper ended. The rear window was a panoramic view of the world behind you. The 1969 federal standard changed the landscape of the cabin forever. It didn't just require headrests, it specified a minimum height and width to ensure the head was supported during a violent rear-end impact. This meant engineers had to mount two massive opaque blocks directly in the driver's line of sight. Suddenly, the center of the rear window, the most critical area for backing up, was blocked. Depending on the car's design, your rear visibility was slashed by as much as 30%. For highway driving, it was a minor annoyance. But for a parent backing out of a crowded driveway, it was a catastrophe. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration wasn't looking for this. In 1970, backup accidents weren't even their own category. They were buried in general collision data. But while the government was celebrating the end of whiplash, the insurance companies were seeing a disturbing trend. Claims for reverse gear collisions, cars hitting poles, walls, and pedestrians began to climb. By 1975, backup accidents had surged by an estimated 40% compared to the mid-60s. But it wasn't just bent metal. The death toll was rising, and the victims were the most vulnerable on the road. If you want to see the original design sketches that traded a clear view for a padded restraint, subscribe and join us. We're uncovering the hidden history of the technical decisions that changed the way we drive. In the design studios of the 70s, visibility was being sacrificed for a safety checkmark. The human toll was staggering. By the late 1980s, nearly 300 people were dying every year in backup accidents. Another 15,000 were being sent to emergency rooms. The majority of these fatalities were children under the age of 5. They were being struck in their own driveways by family members who simply could not see them over the top of the newly mandated headrests. This was the silent epidemic. A father would walk to his car, check his mirrors, and look over his shoulder. He would see those two large headrests and the high package shelf of a modern sedan. He would think the path was clear, unaware that a toddler was playing in a 20-foot blind zone created by the very features meant to keep the family safe. The irony was as dark as it gets. The headrest was preventing whiplash, an injury that was painful and expensive but rarely fatal. Meanwhile, the loss of visibility was causing deaths. We had traded a sore neck for a lost life. Engineers recognized the problem almost immediately, but their hands were tied. They couldn't remove the headrests, that was a federal crime. They couldn't make them smaller, that would violate the safety standards. Some manufacturers tried to get creative. They designed see-through headrests with holes in the middle, or narrower tombstone seats, but the federal strength requirements meant these designs were often heavy and expensive. The industry's real solution was to add convex side mirrors. We all know the phrase, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. But those mirrors distorted distance and did nothing to solve the massive dead zone directly behind the trunk. As we moved into the 1990s, the problem shifted from bad to worse. The American consumer moved away from sedans and into SUVs and trucks. These vehicles sat higher off the ground, had even larger headrests, and featured smaller, more angled rear windows. A study in 2002 found that a standard SUV had a rear blind zone of nearly 30 feet. You could park a small motorcycle behind the vehicle, and the driver wouldn't see a single chrome bolt. For a small child, the vehicle was effectively a wall.
By the early 2000s, groups like the Consumer Federation of America were calling for a total overhaul of backup safety. They pointed out that we had spent 40 years optimizing for front-end and rear-end crashes while completely ignoring the danger of the reverse gear. But the solution didn't come from a better seat design. It came from a technology that was science fiction in 1969, the backup camera. The first systems appeared in luxury cars like the Infiniti Q45 and the Lexus LS. They were expensive $1,000 options that required a dashboard screen, something most cars didn't have yet. But the impact was undeniable. Vehicles equipped with cameras saw a nearly 50% drop in backup accidents. They didn't just help the driver, they eliminated the blind zone entirely. As the technology became cheaper, the push for a new mandate began. But this time, it was an emotional battle. Parents who had lost children in backover accidents became the faces of the movement. They argued that a backup camera wasn't a luxury, it was a necessary correction for a 40-year-old design flaw. The automotive industry fought back, citing the cost. They argued that adding cameras and screens to every economy car would add billions to the total cost of transportation. But the data won out. In 2014, the government issued a new mandate. By May 2018, every single new vehicle sold in America had to have a backup camera. The 2018 mandate effectively closed the loop that began in 1969. The government had created a visibility crisis by mandating headrests, and 49 years later, they mandated a camera to fix the damage. The backup camera is estimated to save over 60 lives a year. It's a success story, but it's also a cautionary tale about systems thinking. When we optimize one part of a machine, like whiplash protection, we almost always degrade another part, like visibility. In the late 60s, nobody asked, if we block the rear window, what happens to the children in the driveway? They were so focused on the data in front of them that they ignored the consequences behind them. It took 5 decades and thousands of preventable tragedies to develop the technology that could see through the very safety features we had created. Today, modern cars are safer than ever, but they are also more closed in. Between thick roof pillars for rollover protection and massive headrests for whiplash, the modern driver is almost entirely dependent on sensors and cameras. We have traded our eyes for electronics. It makes you wonder, what are we mandating today that will require a fix 50 years from now? Are we making cars so heavy with safety gear that we're creating new risks in braking and handling? Are we so focused on the automated future that we're forgetting how the human driver actually interacts with the world? The headrest was a noble idea that had a lethal blind spot.
It teaches us that in the world of engineering, there is no such thing as a pure safety feature. There are only trade-offs. What's your take on modern car visibility? Do you find yourself relying entirely on your backup camera, or do you still find the over-the-shoulder look more reliable? Have you ever had a close call because of a blind spot created by a headrest or a thick pillar? Share your story in the comments. Let's talk about the era when the government accidentally blocked our view of the world.